Before we start today's roundtable, I want to give special thanks to Checkster, our group sponsor. Checkster has become well known in the recruiting industry by providing a platform that easily captures reference checks in the hiring process. I myself have been a customer of theirs for years. I use a reference checking tool for all of my new hires. However, Checkster has now released a new product suite called Insights. This new product suite is really what has excited me to have Checkster as the group sponsor. With Insights, the Checkster platform now covers employees from cradle to grave and not just reference checking, starting when they apply, going to offer, through onboarding, then covering their work at your company, and then to the end with exit interviews. It's an easy to use, easy to understand way of giving and getting feedback from your peers. Checkster's simple goal: to build more productive and passionate teams. Now, if this concept of getting insights from your peers regarding your work sounds familiar, it should, because that's the simple goal of this group: connecting, communicating, collaborating. Support me, support the group. Follow the link below, recruiting.org/Checkster. This will take you to a landing page to sign up for a quick demo. If you're just thinking about automating your reference checking process, it'll be well worth your time. But I encourage you to check out the full Insights suite. I'd love to find out if you feel the way I feel about it. Now let's get to today's roundtable. Great, so let's jump right into it. Thank you everybody for attending episode number 53 in Let's Talk Recruiting, where peer practitioners from across the country get together to talk about various recruiting topics. Today's topic, the elevator pitch recruiters use at your company. I think I may have phrased that title wrong, but it's all that pitch that we do on a daily basis, multiple times a day. I think some people have long ones, some people have short ones, but we all kind of have to sell our company in different ways. So what we're going to do today is kind of talk to our different panelists today to kind of hear what their elevator pitch is like and just to have a conversation around that. So we have with us today Stephen Rosenblum out of Chicago, Ingrid Smith out of Boston, Craig Natal, did I get it right?
Natalie, yeah.
Natalie, okay. And who's out of Raleigh, the Triangle area, and then Kristen Silva out of the DC area. So with that said, Stephen, let's jump to you first in your item.
Great, thanks. Hi, everybody, and welcome. A little bit about me. I live in the Chicago area. I have been in human resources and talent acquisition for many years, with a concentration in recruiting and talent acquisition. It's kind of my sweet spot and my passion, what I get up every day to do. I've worked for many different companies. I invite you to check out my LinkedIn profile. It is public, and I welcome anybody who wants to connect and network with me as well. Right now, I am pseudo in transition, meaning I'm looking for full-time work, but working on a contract right now at a nationwide industrial and commercial painting company, painting and floor covering company. Prior to this, I was with a Midwest furniture company, and prior to that, I was in charge of talent acquisition for North America for Claire's, the ear piercing and accessories retailer. So a lot of experience with many different industries over the years. So regarding the elevator pitch for recruiters. So one thing I want everybody to remember is that an interview is a two-way process, right? Not only are we interviewing candidates, but they're interviewing us. If you're a staffing firm professional, they're trying to find out more information about the company that you're looking for them for. If you're directly working for a corporation, then they want to know more about your corporate culture and the position and the hiring manager, and really learn more about what you've got to offer in addition to what they have to offer. So keep that in mind. So one thing I encourage my recruiters and hiring managers to do is think like the candidate, okay? We all know what we want to project to a candidate, but what do we think the candidate really wants to know? So with that, it's useful to start anticipating questions and try to answer them maybe even before they're asked. So my elevator pitch is usually towards the end of the interview. And it includes many different items, which I'm going to cover just in a second. But one thing I encourage my recruiters to do in thinking about what questions the candidate might ask is they know they've done a really good job, or the candidate's not all that great if at the end they say, "So do you have any questions of me?" Right? And so it could be one of two reasons, but ideally it's because you've answered all their questions. right? Maybe they came with a list of questions and you started knocking them off, right? And at the end, they're like, yeah, I think, you've really answered all my questions. To me, that's a good score and something that I think I've done a good job if I've been able to answer all their questions really up front. But here are some items that I encourage my recruiters and hiring managers as well to cover with the candidates, because hiring managers need to do this too when they're interviewing, right? Obviously, more information about the company, not only the history of the company. Right now, I'm working for a very family-owned company, and they're very proud of their history since the 70s. But what does the business look like going forward, right? What are you doing right now? Everybody wants to know, what are you doing around the pandemic? What are you doing as far as people being able to work remote or come in the office? If they're coming in the office, what are the safety protocols that you're following? So that they feel good about where the organization is going as well. Why the position's open, right? Everybody wants to know, why are you looking for somebody for this job? Job expectations and important aspects of what's expected of someone new coming into the job. What you never want to hear from someone that you hire is, that's not what they told me this was, right? Or I was going to be doing. So we've all heard the term realistic job expectations. It's great to lay that out there right now, in addition to maybe what's written in the job description that they've already seen. Who does the position report to, right? They want to know that. Maybe a little bit about that person, describing the company culture and why, if I'm working there, what attracted me and what I like about working there. It's a little bit more difficult to do if you're a staffing agency kind of person, but you could still say what you love about working with that company, right? What you see from people that you've placed there before, those kinds of things. And finally, reviewing benefits, hours of operation, some more of the tactical kind of things, what the dress code is like, what their workspace is going to be, some more of the very basic, when I get there, what's it going to be, so that they have those answers. And really, it's about making them feel comfortable that this is a place that they want to be. And the very final thing that I tend to leave people with, which sometimes they ask and sometimes they don't, is next steps, right? That's kind of the closure of your elevator speech, is now this is what's going to happen. So that they have that as an end piece. If you don't give it to them, they may not ask it, but it's always something maybe in the back of their mind. So that's what I've got.
And Stephen, you mentioned, to your point. No, sorry, Sean, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Craig.
Stephen, to your point, right at the end, if it's a great candidate, you've got to put your sales hat on. I immediately ask them where they are in other processes. What does your timing look like? Are you in a second round with another company, a final round with the third? And understand where they are in the offer process, so you can then turn around to the hiring manager to try to expedite the process, because the smart candidates, the good ones, are slow rolling one process, expediting the second, trying to line everything up so they get offers the same week.
So along those lines, Craig and Stephen, to your point when you said it's a two-way street, what about those times, like when you're cold calling, right? You're out doing outbound recruiting, and it's not quite a two-way street. Are we differentiating how we deliver what we're pitching or how we pitching based upon, hey, did this person already apply to us, versus I reached out to you on LinkedIn, or I got you through a referral, and you're kind of, they don't know who you are. They haven't done any research. They don't know anything about the job. Are we altering our pitch, so to speak, according to those two scenarios? Any thoughts?
Yeah, you have to give more information if you're cold calling, because they don't know where you're coming from, right? My hope is if they've applied to the job, maybe they've done a little research. First of all, they've seen what I put out there. Maybe they've explored, they've done research on the company, on whatever websites are available for them to do that type of thing. Contact people, find out more about it even before I have a conversation with them. But definitely you have to give more basic information, who we are, what we're doing, even bits and pieces of the job description, to see if it's something they're interested in. You can always, once you engage them and verify that there is that interest level, you could schedule a next call with them to give them, again, that opportunity to do a little research on their own, so that when you do have that reconnect, that they're a little bit more ahead of the curve than when you just straight cold call. Craig made up a great point. We're salespeople, right? This elevator pitch is used by salespeople. If you ever watch the movie Tommy Boy, one of my favorite movies of all time, when I got stuck in temporary housing, it was like the only thing on HBO, and I watched it like 100 times. He gives an elevator speech at the end of the movie, Tommy does. And so candidates are giving an elevator speech, and as recruiters, we need to give an elevator speech as salespeople, right? We sell the candidate to the hiring manager. We sell the company to the candidate. So great point, Craig.
Yeah, and you never get a second chance to make a first impression, right? So if you've got strong candidates that, hopefully the company you're working for represent, has a high bar, and the candidates you're looking for are the same candidates other companies would like to hire. To that point, once you get them on the phone, they've already been contacted by numerous headhunting firms, by other corporate recruiters. So you only have one chance to make that impression. It's got to be compelling. And especially if you're at a senior enough level, you've got to be credible. And they have to leave that conversation not only thinking, wow, I think the company's fantastic, but did that talent acquisition person really, really represent that company well?
Craig, if you're leaving a message on a voicemail, are you keeping it short and sweet, or are you dropping a little pitch?
It's going to be 30 seconds or less. The pitch won't be long. It'll be just one or two hooks, and then back to reach back out to us. We're really excited about the opportunity.
The art of the voicemail.
It would have to be very targeted, and it's actually that kind of pivots. It's not even an example that I sent you, Sean, but there is one that was kind of coming to mind from this conversation. So one of my, in my background, in addition to like running global talent acquisition at companies, one of my roles back when I was at McAfee was I built out their executive search function in-house from scratch. I had been like leading the Americas team, and then, had some success, placing some, the first head of product marketing, a couple other roles. So it sort of organically turned into this. In any case, when you're on the phone and you're trying to court a CIO or a head of marketing or what have you, you have really got to understand the business at a very almost granular level, almost as much as the hiring manager. Like, you really have to understand it. And I recognize that while my role, that was just necessary, it really set expectations for me, for my teams going forward. And it's something that I've carried with me everywhere. Even to the extent that at one of my positions, I was running global talent acquisition at Polycom. Had a great team there, kind of walked in, there was already a team in place and really great people. And I think that some of them hadn't been managed as much, so I'm walking around listening to them on the phone with candidates. It really sounds like they're reading from the job description, right? I wasn't getting that they had that story and that they really understood both the business and the culture, and because I think it's very holistic. And one of the things I had them do, which I got a lot of grumbling about, was I had them go through the same sales training that the sales team had to go through. And one of their goals was to deliver the corporate pitch. It was a bit of a pared down version, but it made them really understand the business, how it worked. And then they could tie in the culture piece, which is, I think, the recruiters in general usually have that part down. It's often that they don't have the full picture down.
Yeah, to that point, Ingrid, right? What's the best compliment you can give somebody in talent acquisition is when the candidate says at the end of the interview, so are you in the business or are you in HR? And you say, it worked. I'm in talent. They said, I thought you were the hiring manager. I thought you were in the business because you understood the depth and breadth of it so well.
That's totally it. Yeah, that's absolutely it. So I just think it's a holistic approach. And I think it's also that I just think that we have to be a bit of matchmakers. So as much as we're also telling a compelling story, it has to be real, because you don't want to bring somebody on board, and maybe this is kind of my executive recruiter hat, but you need to make sure that they're going to be the right fit for you and vice versa. So maybe some of the things that are compelling or that you think are compelling that are part of your pitch, maybe they're not compelling to those candidates. You know, right now I'm at a small biotech, I'm at a startup, and I tell you, it is chaotic. It is somebody that potentially would have been, you know, siloed in a large company running a piece of the organization. They're not going to do well, probably, for us, you know. So
Too many hats.
Yep.
Mhm.
So around telling the story and knowing the complete business as much as you can, when we're doing our elevator pitches, are we providing any type of collateral? Like, hey, I'll send you an attachment, or I'll send you a link to a post or a video. Is this just all verbal, or are we kind of following up that phone conversation or interview with more pieces of content, so to speak?
I found that depends on the job and the level of the job, the type of the job, right? If it's something in graphic design or web development or something like that, maybe they're more inclined to receive something like that and want to receive something like that to give them an idea of some of the things they may get involved in. If it's a senior executive role, certainly they want to know a little bit more. And for me, maybe to even have an introductory video for them from someone within the organization, maybe the CEO or something like that, if it's a really senior level. Otherwise, it's more, honestly, it's more, here's a link to our website.
Yeah.
So,
And sometimes you can send them your investor deck, right? Like in the biotech space or the biopharma space, there's JP Morgan every year. And our investor relations group puts together a deck that they go out and they pitch, right, to the broader biopharma community. And then you have this fantastic, 35 slide deck that covers the entire pipeline, covers the history, talks about the innovation. It's a super compelling, really slick, because it's done by the professionals in the organization. I mean, we can only do so many things, right? We're not going to be able to put together a deck as well as somebody who does that for a living with all the right data. So to those folks, and I also ask, did you get a chance to listen to the last earnings call? Have you read the transcript of the last earnings call? Because I want to know what their framework is coming into the conversation. Who do you know that works here, right? If they know A, B, or C, what do they tell you about the culture of the company? So I want to understand how they're coming at me first, what type of knowledge they have about my organization, and then I can help frame my pitch to round out their knowledge base so that if I push them through to the hiring manager, they've got some leverage. They've got some angles that they can kind of sit on, and they have these calibration points that they can work with going forward.
and when I tell someone, just go look at our website, the idea is that you have a good website, right? that your applicant tracking system or your employment careers website has things like testimonials, videos, more information about your culture, maybe links to blogs or something that people can explore and learn more about as well. Not just go to our website and see what our jobs are. You need to have the right information if that's where you want to drive someone in that type of a scenario.
Yeah, and I think,
I was going to say on that point, Stephen, like as well as the rest of the team, I think that one of the things that I've always found is I've joined companies that have needed updated websites. I'm not sure, or I've needed more collateral that's been available, but there's always been this need that I've had to really partner very close with marketing. It's like I join a company and, okay, who's in charge of marketing? Because we need to make some updates, or the website doesn't match the rest of it, or we need testimonials. I mean, I've done that in 2 jobs in a row where it's like I join and our website is not speaking to, we don't even have a career site, just everything kind of across the board, and being able to have that partnership to also make sure that your message that's on your website and on your social media, and can you get materials from them to be able to share, all of that really helps with that overall message that you're trying to share with candidates.
let me pose a scenario at you. I was in a conference a few years back, and the topic was telling your story, right, from a recruiter's point of view. Can't remember the name of the company. It was a logistics company. The recruiter basically said, hey, I recruit truck drivers. That's basically what I do. And they're already truck drivers. I'm trying to get them to be a driver for my company. Like, where's the sizzle? Where's the story in it? In my head, I was like, well, I'd be talking about best food places to eat on the road and the new CV technology or all that satellite stuff going on. I'd be telling that story or that sizzle of the life of a driver and how the company can kind of engages around that. So Craig and Ingrid, you both work in biopharma. I spent like 7 years supporting sourcing at Genentech. So biotech and stuff, all kinds of stories you can tell. There's too much to pick from. We almost got to narrow it down, in my opinion, because it's just so interesting. Industry is unique. For the panel, if you work at a company that, to put it quite frankly, doesn't have a lot of sizzle to it, they're a good business, they're making money, good options, but there's not a lot of sizzle to that job. How do we add a little sizzle to our elevator pitch?
I think you could find out their hot buttons, right? People
Okay.
have motivations. Different things are attractive to different people. So you could start by probing. Hey, so great to have a conversation today. Why jazz? Why now? Why are we on the phone today? Right? And let them tell you, well, I'm at a company, we didn't get the Series B funding, or we just failed a phase 3 clinical trial, or we've got a terrible culture, I don't like my boss, the commute's too far, whatever. And then you can, on the fly, customize your pitch based upon what their hot buttons are.
All right. So like life situation, evidently for the candidate, right, so to speak, in a way. Anybody else? I know it's a tough one. That's why I'm asking.
Well, when I was at Polycom, if anybody remembers them, I think they're now going by Poly. But in any case, it was like a unified communications, which in itself, I mean, let's be honest, that doesn't sound very sexy. It's not very compelling. It was like big video screens, which maybe now we understand, given life, the importance of being able to work remotely, but it didn't used to be as compelling. So it was really the story. And again, I was working very closely with marketing to help get their input and asking them to help me and my team craft compelling things to share. But it was all about communication. Like, how do I work better from home? How can I work from India? How can I work? And it was all, so we shared a lot of stories about enabling people to live their lives and work at the same time. So that was what we were doing.
And you could tell them why you're there. You know, let me tell you why I've been here for 4 years, why I don't take the calls from recruiters trying to pull me out, right? A, B, C, and D. I'm not going to waste everyone's time, but the point is, there are reasons we're in the jobs that we are. And if we genuinely like where we are, getting that enthusiasm out to the candidate, letting them see the passion behind the purpose for work, right? We're very mission driven. We're about putting the patient first, right? That's jazz. Put the patient first, be a great place to work second. And I can give examples of both of those tenets of the company and how we live our values through those tenets. And people will, that resonates. You know, if you're an oncology MD, I mean, everyone, all 49 of us on the call here, we've all lost someone to cancer, right? So a lot of people in our industry are mission driven to want to do right by the patient. And sometimes that's all they need to hear, because they may be coming from an organization where they're just focused on the finances, or they're just focused on operational excellence, and they never really have the patient in the forefront.
All right. Hey, Ingrid, did we cover your topics? I know we didn't.
I kind of, jumped around a bit, but yes, I think I got most of them in.
Great. Craig, let's jump over to you and your items.
Yeah, so I think what I try to do is get the candidates what they can't get on their own, right? Because you expect, you know, the people I'm interviewing are typically VP level or higher. I expect they're going to have some background. They will have done some research, but what won't they know? They might not know, you know, how the company was founded, right? When it was founded, or the purpose behind the mission, which I just shared. They won't know the size and the scope, right? That we're 1,800 people, 1/3 in Europe, 2/3 in the States. They might not know how, you know, well we're run financially through some of the operational prowess that we talked about, you know, that we generate almost 50 cents in profit on every dollar of top line revenue. You know, they might not know that we've raised guidance during the last earnings call in the middle of COVID. They won't necessarily know that, strategically, our corporate development team is out there looking at 100 assets a year. And they're going to pull 2 or 3 of those assets across the finish line every single year from an in-licensing perspective or an acquisition perspective. So, and especially if they're coming from big pharma, you were at Genentech, Ingrid's been at, I think, some bigger companies as well. A lot of times they just want to make an impact. They feel like a spoke in a wheel. Like if they went to work, it almost wouldn't even matter if they didn't show up, because there's so many other people there doing work that if they took a 2-week vacation, or heck, if they just didn't sign on for a month, the business is going to continue to roll forward. And I think what a lot of these people want more than anything else is just to make an impact, make a difference. And, because we're 1,800 people, you have the ability to do that. You can impact patients. You can impact Jazz as a company. You can impact our shareholders. If you're in the right role, you can single-handedly impact our shareholders, right? So there are a lot of different components to this. And I think the optics of being at a smaller company, I'm a remote employee from Raleigh. And while I have traveled numerous times to Europe and to our US headquarters in Palo Alto, I know the CEO by name and face. He knows me by name and face, and the president. Everyone on the executive committee knows who I am, and I'm a remote employee in North Carolina. And that's because we're 1,800 people. So you're not going to get that necessarily at, an Apple, a Google, a Facebook, a Genentech, any of these really large, 100,000 person companies, because the impact you make is hard to be felt, right? So I think we try to talk about how they can make an impact, and that often goes a long, long way. And that ties into the culture, right? We talked about wanting to be a great place to work. We have better than industry average retention rates, and we're empathetic, right? We're a little kinder, gentler. So Ingrid went from San Francisco to Boston. This is my first West Coast culture company. It's so different than working on the East Coast. It's not even close. And people who don't know that, if you've only worked on the East Coast, you have no idea that a West Coast culture company is a little kinder, a little gentler, right? They're less pointy elbows, right? No one's going to throw you under the bus in a meeting, because it's just more familiar. It's hard to explain, but it's a much better, there's less stress.
Yep.
Like your head hits the pillow at night, and if you're thinking about work, it's not in a panic mode. It's about, you're excited about what you can do the next day and how you can contribute to the organization.
Kind of going with comparisons, Craig, not to get off topic. I've worked at a hedge fund company on the East Coast, and the closest, those talk about pointy elbows. There's blades on those elbows compared to VCs in Palo Alto. That's kind of like the closest combination to it. But okay, great. Sorry, I just had to tell it a little quick. So Craig, let me ask you this. So great selling point, so to speak, right? For lack of better words. I know that you're not trying to sell, but involve and engage. Is there a point, and again, this is for all panelists, where, hey, if I'm feeling I need to sell too hard, I probably don't have the right candidate? Do we kind of stop at a certain line? I just sort of give my experience back in the day at a third party, right? I'd sell hard to get you out of your company so I could try and go place you. Different than corporate recruiting. My final step, that if I tried to get somebody out of the current situation, open to other opportunities, that I would kind of do like a compare and contrast to try and, that's my last ditch effort to try and get you to be interested in what I have. That's a hard sell. I don't see that happening in corporate recruiting. But to the bigger question, is there a line that we don't cross when it comes to trying to sell somebody in, or do we just inform and engage as best we can and don't cross that hard sell line in corporate recruiting?
I think as long as you're transparent, right? Not everything is rainbows and unicorns, right? Yeah, every company's got warts. There are always issues, right? Sometimes your greatest strength is your biggest weakness, right? We're a highly collaborative culture, but guess what? Sometimes we over collaborate, right? Sometimes you don't make a decision fast enough because you're too worried about the other 7 people in the room agreeing with you. So you can talk about how compelling it is to have this collaborative culture, but with the transparency that it doesn't always make it right every time. And if they're a passive candidate, the sell might have to be different than if they're a motivated candidate. So if you've got your sourcing team, and Genentech's got one of the best in the world, where you're going out and proactively headhunting as a corporate entity, and you're pulling these board certified oncologists who can get a job anywhere they want in the world. Yeah, this sell is going to have to be a little bit more compelling than if they just got let go somewhere and their package runs out in 12 weeks and now they're looking for the next gig. You're not going to have to put the sell on there.
Anybody else to add to the hard sell? Kristen, let's jump over to you.
Yeah, I think it comes back to looping into what's in it for them and what differentiates our company versus other companies that might be trying to woo them over at the same time. Depending on which industry we're talking about, sometimes it's still during COVID, it's a candidate market versus an employer market. So what I've always done is kind of read between the lines in how I deliver my pitch, like it was already mentioned. And I think that saving the pitch to the end, unless they bring it up sooner, really makes a lot of sense. So to kind of like wrap up what everybody else has already shared, I think the best way to approach it is what's in it for them. Now, I mean, yeah, we can gush about why we're here. And I personally use my own experiences instead of saying like, oh, an employee said this. I use my own tried and true experience because I have it's all my skin in the game. Like if I can't be a woman of my word, then why would you want to come and work for me? So, and understanding that they're interviewing us just as much as we're interviewing them. Sometimes I even explain that. Like, I know you're interviewing me too. Like, what are we up against? I ask what the other job offers might look like. And more importantly, understanding what's important to them in the sense of what they're looking to do next in their role. Not just what are you capable of, but what's putting you out on the job market, unless it's something like a contract ending or they're getting like furloughed where it's a little out of their hands. But if they're navigating the job search on their own accord, what's missing? And so understanding, just yesterday, I had a candidate say that she loves what she does, but the company culture where she's at is not for her. So I was like, okay, great. But that's a blanket statement. Can you dive into that for me? Because the core values and culture of our company here at Net Impact are very important to us. So I want to make sure that I explain to you what would be different or similar to what you're experiencing. Because for us as recruiters, the last thing I want to do is fill this position again in 3 months.
Right.
Yes. I want to set them up knowing what challenges they're going to overcome. And with Net Impact being in the federal space, there are a lot of top competitors in the DC area that are thousands of employees, and we're 300. So there are pros and cons to that. And so allowing the employee to understand where they fit into the big picture of the growth of the organization, as opposed to just solving today's problem, is always a nice way that I wrap it up as well. Not just like, hey, we've been in business for 11 years and we started as a minority women-owned small business and we've grown and our reputation. And I mean, yeah, we've all got the jazz hands, but when it comes down to it, it's what's important to that individual. If it's community service involvement, if it's doing the right thing for our customer, if it's risking our profit to maintain our reputation. Like, I have specific examples in my back pocket because as a TA leader, I am in those important conversations with our executives. So I know what's coming and I can speak to it. I might not have specific contract details to discuss, but being able to paint that picture of growth for the individual, not just saying like, oh, our company's great and this is what you can do for us. It's what we can do for them.
So Kristen, real quick on that, because you bring up a great point. And I share this with hiring managers sometimes. If I go through a first round of phone screens, I'll come back to my weekly one-to-one and I'll say, well, here we go. I've got two candidates. Candidate A has a really high floor. They can walk in the door tomorrow. They can do the job. And it's a super safe pair of hands. You'll probably never promote them. Candidate B hasn't the experience candidate A does, but they've got a higher trajectory. And my sense is they could probably promote it 2 or 3 times in the next 8 years. What's your choice? Like, which which type of candidate would you be interested in seeing as we go forward? Because to Kristen's point, that person with the really high floor who's done the job for 20 years, who can walk in and do it blindfolded, might not want to talk to them about other opportunities as they go forward, but the here and now, versus really selling that higher trajectory candidate on, well, when you get in here, within 2 years, look at these other opportunities you can have inside.
And
To that point. So I try to train and retrain my hiring managers whenever I do my like quarterly recruiting refresher training to reflect back on the 80-20 rule. It's much better to bring in somebody that has that little bit of growth to get everything we need, because then they're going to have greater buy-in. They're not coming in as a SME that can do it in their sleep, which does solve some of our problems, but it doesn't plan for the future of that particular contract or the expansion of that area of our business. So I always have that like come to Jesus moment with them, like, okay, I get what you really want, but what do you need? And then also being able to relay that message in the pitch to the candidate, like, hey, yeah, this project is using XYZ platform. I know you don't have that, but you have some stuff similar. So if you're interested in learning, we have the tools in place to help you grow in that specialty. Like, is that exciting for you? And then the wheels start turning and they're painting the picture of a long-term career, not just another job.
Right.
So it's I look at it as kind of like asking but not asking, because I hate that question and it's such a throw out now, is where do you see yourself in 5 years? Where do you see yourself in, and nobody here on this call should be asking that question, okay?
Nope. I don't remember the last time I asked that.
Don't ask that question. But it's kind of like, what are you looking for, right? What are you looking for? Not necessarily out of this job, but what are you looking for as a professional, or as a, even if it's an entry-level role, what are you looking for? Talk to me about what your interests are. Where do you want to go as a career? Don't say in 5 years or 10 years, oh, I want to be in your job. That was always a typical hiring manager answer, right? But now, just ask them and get clarity as to where do they see themselves down the road? What are they looking for? Why are you interested in this position? They may tell you the answer that you are looking for, which is, I'm looking for growth. I'm looking for development. I want to move in from if you're interviewing them for a manager job, I want to be a director, those kinds of things. They may answer those questions. I'm fortunate that most of the companies I've worked for are in change mode, right? Or are open to changing and not really just keep things going. In fact, I find that if somebody hired me and said, oh, Steve, we just want you to keep things the way they are and just manage things on a daily basis, I'd be like, time for another, look at me for something else, because I'm into that kind of process improvement and things like that. But a lot of people can answer that question for you in a more general fashion, and they can get more specific. At least that's what I see, even from somebody who's going to be a painter at the company that I'm currently recruiting with. They have goals and aspirations to supervise and lead teams and, grow with the company, stay around for a while. If it's a more senior person, shall we say, then, they're looking for opportunities to use those experiences that they've had and bring those to the organization. So to your point, Craig, with the 80-20, I think that was you that said 80-20, to be able to, to have, to take that 80%, I'm a total fit for everything in this job, but there's opportunity to do a little bit more, and most people are really excited about that.
And I think we owe it to our hiring managers, right? If however you produce your feedback to the business, some people have a very well articulated form, it's a template, and they just go through that. Some people have a debrief, like a formal debrief. Or weekly meetings. But if you can't tell the hiring manager 3 reasons why the candidate just had that conversation with you, you haven't done your job. Because it might be commute, culture, and flexibility. Like it might not have anything to do with compensation or their boss or even the job. It could simply be they've had some life changes at their house, right? They went from being a single parents who being in a cohabitating or vice versa. So their needs change. That's why the same candidate who said no 18 months ago might say yes now. And we really owe it to ourselves and our business to understand the motivations of the candidate because they're always different.
So let me ask a question around that scenario where that elevator pitch, right, didn't get their interest right away, but now we're turning into, they didn't say no, but they didn't say yes either, right? So now it turns into a long play. What are some thoughts around maintaining that long-term relationship to keep their interest, to keep that connection? I call them not now, but later, right? Those people who don't tell you no, don't tell you yes, but maybe later, like that. Keep them sort of in play. What are your thoughts there?
So I play the long game a lot in my industry because I recruit for technology professionals in the DC area, most of the time with a clearance. They're not always ready to make a move when I finally get to connect with them. But as a recruiter, even though I've changed companies a lot, I've stayed in a similar industry. I may have done it for a nonprofit for a little bit. I may have done it for private sector, but I've always specialized in that technology realm. So as new softwares and technologies emerge in the government space or elsewhere, I try to stay on top of that. I keep my profile personally very up to date, not just with the company I'm representing, but what's reflective of my own core values. So if there are like leadership memes or something like that, I know I'm hitting these people's pages so that when the time's right, they're not going to forget about me. And also, if it is 4 months from now, 6 months from now, or a guy just started on one of my teams a week and a half ago that I had started the conversation in April of 2019. And it wasn't the right time for him. We had interviewed him, got him an offer. He declined it last year. And when a very similar position on the exact same project came available this time around, he was the first person I thought of. I said, hey, is now a better time? And he said, absolutely. We got him re-interviewed with the new leadership and it was a landslide. But had I not built that groundwork, there would have been a lot more proving to do this time around. So you just kind of go with what's important to them and be a person of your word. If you say you're going to check in 6 months, put a reminder on your calendar. Don't just be that recruiter that like floats around every once in a while when you need something. Check in to see where they're at. If it's one of those candidates that you want to work with them eventually. You just got to figure out the right place. And so I've done that several times throughout my career to the point where now I have candidates follow me to companies when I move.
Kristen is totally on spot. That's exactly what I have done as well. And it's kind of like that, I think, similar to what you were mentioning, Kristen. It's like you follow up with them, or sometimes, as recruiters or as recruiting leaders, we're super busy and somebody pings us and says, hey, remember me? You want to, I always try to take the conversation. And if somebody reaches out, I will make time for them.
Yep.
Because you never know. And they remember that too. And sometimes you have a conversation and maybe where the company that you're at and where they are in their career isn't quite the right thing, but you keep in touch with them and you just never, and then they remember that. It's just, it pays off.
And they send you referrals.
Yeah.
I've placed people.
They send referrals.
From people who,
I've hired referrals from people that weren't a right fit for the job, but they liked working with me so much. They're like, my friend is perfect for this. Can I send the resume? I'm like, yeah, I'll take them however I can get them. But then to further your point, Ingrid, not just that they'll remember the interaction and depending on where they're at in their career, I think it's also reflective of where you're at in your own recruiting career. Because the longer you're in the business, the longer you're in a specific sector, the better known your name is going to become. So another great example, I've just had some really cool things happen during COVID. Thank goodness, knock on wood. I had a guy that I hired for a project that I found his profile just organically this time. But when I emailed him, he recognized my name from when I reached out to him when I was working with the nonprofit 3 years ago. Because my name is unique, not just for the DC area, my name is just not a common name. So he recognized it and was like, I know I've talked to you before. And then as soon as I looked at our chat history in LinkedIn, I was like, you're right. We did talk. How's it going? Old friend. And we got him hired and he's perfect. And he's doing swimmingly on our project. So it's just funny how people remember how you treat them and how you interact with them. Now, had he had a terrible experience with me 3 years ago and I was bad at follow through or didn't properly represent my company then, I would be just a dime a dozen recruiter today. But I stood out because of what I do and what I pride my own work on. And that just happens to reflect well on each company that I choose to be employed by.
So I want to take this and flip it for just 1 second, and that's from the candidate to a different place that we have to use a elevator speech or elevator pitch. And that is, as talent acquisition professionals, many of us use staffing firms, right? And so for us, in two things, in engaging a staffing firm, we still need to have an elevator pitch, right? We need to pitch the company, we need to pitch the opportunities so that the staffing firm can, in my opinion, be an arm of my department, be an arm of my function, be part of, be an extension of myself in staffing positions with the organization. And secondly, to what everybody here has been just talking about, and that is staying connected and following up. Same thing with staffing firms, right? We are all right now remote, and we have recruiters who are remote. Do you only talk to your recruiter when you need something from them? Or are you staying in contact with them on some kind of regular basis? Now, I'm not saying, if you're having weekly one-on-ones with your recruiters, to have weekly one-on-one with staffing firms, right? But to keep connected, I've got staffing firms that I have built such solid professional networking relationships with that, yeah, some of them call me when I post a job. Hey, Steve, do you need help with that? Okay, fine. But also, I'm reaching out to them. They're reaching out to me just to stay connected, to talk about, how are things going with my company? How are things going in, and I'm contacting them not only to just stay connected from a networking professional perspective, but to get more information about what's going on in the world of recruiting, what's going on, in filling positions, what are they seeing? So I think it's important on the flip side of not just candidates with an elevator pitch, but with, different resources that we have to have an elevator pitch for working with them as well.
So on that point of networking your elevator pitch, so to speak, Ingrid, like for you in a smaller size company, or Kristen in a focused skill set, are you kind of enabling your employees or your tech developers, your tech team with content or things to say or things to that, so they know how to deliver the company elevator pitch when they're kind of out there, like in their employee referral program or anything like that? Are we kind of networking the knowledge of what to say or in that regard?
Yes. So at our company, when we first rolled out the training, we made it mandatory for everybody who was involved in the interview process, not just for hiring managers. We also rolled out a new ATS, so it was a lot easier for us to be like, you have to come to this. And then I shoved in a bunch of recruiting protocol as a reminder. But I do refreshers every quarter or so, and we are creating some go-to content for our intranet. So they're the quick 5 to 7 minute training videos, so people can go in as a refresher so that they can understand how they can help seal the deal. But what I always let them know is hey, I laid the groundwork. You have to close them on the specifics of how they're going to fit into your team. And together we can make this a winning situation for everybody. So I think it's really, really important to kind of tackle both angles, but enable and arm your interview panel, no matter what level. With that, one of the key facets that I always tell them is to be honest. It's the good, the bad, and the ugly. Let the candidate know the challenges, logistics of the project, personality conflict. Let them take the challenge, because then they're more prepared for it. Or if it's not for them, they will remove themselves from consideration. It's so much better than the bait and switch saying, this is a great project, and then they get in there and the client's a bear. They probably would have still taken the job, but it would have been nice to give them a heads up. So I feel like that honesty and transparency, even though it doesn't speak to the company, it does. It reflects on our core values.
It's matchmaking. I mean, it's absolutely matchmaking, and it has to be the right fit on both ends. And to your point too, I think enabling the hiring managers, they may know what they need, and depending on the company and who they are, they could be, I hate to be like, a nerdy, whatever project, but they really could be, and they might need some help in like, hey, here's what's important to them. I know that these values are also important to you. Just make sure that that comes across, and let them know, like, if the candidate, especially this kind of, was my executive search world, was like, we had to sell to them so much of the time. And oftentimes, one of the things I was going to mention before, and I know this can't be done everywhere, but at that level, when I'm courting somebody, I'm courting like a high level CIO, I would I'd say, why don't you just talk to the CEO? Just a quick conversation.
I do loop them in when I need to.
Yeah,
Right.
for something like that's a really big one, bring them in as part of it. Most of the time, they love that stuff. As long as you're not doing it all the time. Most of the time, they like to feel like they're moving.
Certain level positions, I've done that. Especially if they're more for strategic growth, where it's like, yes, I have a problem today, but I want to help you. I want you to help us like build out this program. Then I need either the CIO or the COO to help them understand the bigger net impact vision of growth. And it doesn't give new information. It's just a different angle on the information. And that's one of the things I love about working for a smaller company. Like, I'm in tune with what's coming, so I can preface the conversation, but then I let them close the deal. And titles do matter at certain levels. So it's important that a senior executive is willing to take 30 minutes to an hour to talk to a candidate as a potential part of our business.
Excellent. Well, hey, we're coming close to an hour. Great conversation. What I want to do for the final moments here is sort of do like a kind of a round the clock here. Any final thoughts or comments if you have them? So Ingrid, let's start with you.
No, I think that I think that this conversation just shows, how holistic the overall recruiting process is. There's not one piece that's going to make somebody successful. It really is that end to end, the ability to communicate well, to understand, and to have the right sort of selection piece down, right? And to be able to say, okay, this person isn't the right fit, and for both of us, and we need to walk.
Yeah, for both.
Yeah.
Kristen, final thoughts?
Yeah, I feel like even though we don't want to own the case that we're in a sales role, because some of us may work on commission if you're in the staffing agency environment, but if you're in-house, you're full-time salary. But it is sales, so keep that passion in your pitch. The candidates are going to know if you're faking it or if you're reading from a script. Speak to your own experience, and that will go miles further than just giving them what you think they want to hear.
And Craig?
That was brilliant. Couldn't agree more. When the candidates respond to you, thanking you for the time, and they say, it was clear from your energy and passion about the company that that's a great place to be. Mm-hmm. And that goes with what Kristen had spoken about. Our job is for every single candidate to hang up the phone or leave the Zoom meeting and go, man, I want to work there.
Yeah.
But while being transparent, right? Or not being afraid to uncover the warts. Nothing's perfect. But for them to feel like they've got this nice, holistic, I like to say, I'm going to provide them with the framework they need to have productive conversations going forward.
Yeah, and to emphasize that, I hope maybe this is sort of, if you've been in it for a while, the impact that the recruiter has on those initial calls on what the candidate thinks of the company. It's like almost all on that recruiter experience. And I hate to hear bad recruiter stories.
Yes.
But they're out there, right? To the point about, I think you go from being from a new recruiter to a good recruiter when you go from filling recs to candidate engagement. And your focus is that candidate versus the rec. I think it takes you to another level. I think the candidates see that quite overwhelmingly, because I've heard too many stories. I love this recruiter, and I hear, oh, that recruiter sucked. So the difference, it's easy to make once you make that jump, my opinion. All right, Stephen, give you the final word.
Yeah, a couple things. One is, Kristen, you said it so well. When I start out doing hiring manager recruiter training, which I'm getting ready to do at this company now, I start out by asking people, raise your hand if you're in sales, right? and all the finance people, all the IT people, right? They're like, yeah. So I
The
say
T-Rex.
everybody should have their hands up.
Not me. I can't raise my hands.
Everybody should have their hands up, right? We're all salespeople. Everybody who is recruiting is selling, right? Like I mentioned, as a recruiter, you're either selling the company or you're selling the candidate, right? Or maybe you're selling yourself, but you're selling, and you need to come to realization that that's what you do. And so you need to have all the right tools, which we've talked about on numerous other panel discussions with this group, or you need to have the right elevator pitch. If you look up the definition of an elevator pitch, right, it's a sales tool. And it's, I hear people all the time ask, well, how long should your elevator pitch be, right, especially from a candidate side? And back to Craig's point, 30 seconds is great. 60 seconds is fine. It depends on what the message is, who you're talking to, and what you want to deliver to help along with that. Another thing about an elevator pitch is, and as was just mentioned, whether you're a new recruiter or a seasoned recruiter, it takes a little bit of time to be able to develop and express the information you want during your elevator pitch. So, if you have something in mind that you'd like to set as a standard, practice that standard with the hiring manager. This is what I'm planning to tell your candidates. Is this appropriate? Is this correct? To Craig's point, being transparent, to everybody here point, putting it out there. But, some people may want certain things to be explained. Some people may not want certain things explained. So, develop that, practice it, so that when you're really needing to utilize it, that, again, to Craig's point, it's that first impression, making it hit home and hitting a home run right away. That's mine.
Absolutely. So thank you everybody for that. I did want to emphasize one little thing on, do you know if you're doing it right, is the callbacks, kind of to Kristen's point, the callbacks, right? Good recruiters get callbacks, right? Because you have that relationship. That's one little metric. All right. Thank you everybody for that great session. Thank you for going an hour way over our time, but it's a great conversation, so kept going. With that said, thank you everybody. Enjoy your holiday weekend coming up, and I'll talk to everybody soon. Thank you very much.
Cheers. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.